because even though he's plagiarized me for so long, he still doesn't understand what amounts to solution. So my draft for my mandate for mathematically perfected economy and absolute consensual representation has been online for years for public input and rectification. And what the only holdup on it right now is I need a hosting company to volunteer to host us. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking, there's internet sites going down all over the world. People can't afford to pay their bills, and all this equipment is going vacant in these data centers, and there's all this open bandwidth, and all I need is somebody who can provide free hosting for us, at least so long enough as we can get off the ground. But the thing is, we need, if we do the numbers on this is a worldwide mandate for mathematically perfected economy and absolute consensual representation. And it may need to register as many as over 2,000 2-kilobyte SQL database records per second, which vastly exceeds what's necessary to engender a denial of service attack. In other words, we need, if we don't have very sophisticated equipment and expensive bandwidth provided to us, which is being freed up by this very monetary collapse, we could just go online and just go on our face and be dysfunctional. And the cost of this amount to something, in the neighborhood of $250,000 to $500,000 a year. And of course, I can't sponsor that. I've done this my whole life at my own cost. But
I don't think any of us can afford that. We're just trying to get by and spread the word, I think.
Well,
we're just working class stiffs out here. Well,
the truth is, though, my efforts have to dip the foot into that puddle, because
yes.
We're never going to get there without this, because the point of all this is that even with these intense discussions with the Reagan campaign, and having provided models which actually project the failure accurately, the thing is we've got we've got a situation where government is has long, for over 100 years, been compelled to deny us representation, and we cannot count on
correct representation, right?
Right. Actual representation.
Exactly.
And so we have to.
They've been bought and sold.
Yeah,
many through the lobby, the corporate, transnational corporate banking, financial system lobbyists that buy and sell these people, the Tom DeLays and Jack Abramoffs, who've taken control of our government. Representative government died. Really, in my opinion, it died with this decision, this court decision by the Supreme Court with Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission, granting them First Amendment rights, of free speech. A corporation now has the same right as an individual American citizen to fund unlimited amounts of money to the financial campaigns. That's basically outright bribery. It's the end of the republic.
It's purchasing elections, and
right.
and this is why I call the Democrats and the Republicans parties of betrayal. I've talked to the Sarah Palin family. I've been put into contact with family members promoting mathematically perfected economy. You see, and when it gets to the candidate, you do not hear from them. And I'm not suggesting that Sarah Palin is of the kind of material that can lead this country out of its but I am suggesting how exhaustively I've pursued leads and open doors by people who've provided them. I mean, I've had maybe a dozen people who know Ron Paul over the last 15 years personally present mathematically perfected economy to him.
They know that it's that it's a zero sum game, that it can only it's a pyramid. It's nothing different than what Madoff is pulled. It's the same thing. And if you look at the voting record on the Aldrich-Vreeland Act in 1907, in response to their false flag financial panic, the election, the vote, the bill passed the House in 1908, in May of 1908, on a party line, 166 Republicans versus 140 Democrats and 13 Republicans against it. But it passed with a House full of Republicans, pushed it through. Aldrich was a Republican.
Sure.
The Aldrich plan. And the next things that are hard to explain is the election of Franklin Delano Roosevelt when his campaign was financed by the bankers as well. That's a proven fact. And when he took office on March 4th, 1933, within 3 days, he took the U.S. off the gold standard and culminated the Gold Reserve Act in 1934. And and when he passed the Social Security Act, it immediately became a debt repayment system to the Federal Reserve, the interest payments to the Federal Reserve, and it's been soaked and used and misused. The Social Security Act was just another slush fund until you got to Nixon in August 15th, 1971. When he put on the 90-day wage and price freeze and a 10% import surcharge and closed the gold window. Basically, he ended the gold standard, the convertibility between U.S. dollars and gold.
And also was able to confiscate gold at that point in time, I do believe.
But what happened as a result of what Nixon did was there was a rush on the gold supply of the United States. Switzerland, I believe France took they demanded $191 billion in gold in exchange for paper money. The Germans left the Bretton Woods system and saved their Deutschmark by leaving the system. They were the first to leave the system. But this was a
right.
Republican, along with Kissinger, who did all this. And the people involved in that scandal, I would have loved to have a chance to explore all of what that meant, leaving the Austrian system and the resulting free-for-all that has taken place since the suspension of Glass-Steagall by the frauds that are in control now, that were in control under Clinton with Summers, Robert Rubin, and Phil Graham. These criminals.
Both. It's Republican, Democrat.
Both.
We're all on the gerbil wheel. That's all they want.
They've enslaved us.
Yeah, and
that's a whole nother show.
Yeah, it's the libertarians as well.
Exactly.
I mean, I wrote Ken Snyder for 20 years, 30 years. I've written Ron Paul for 30 years. Back in 1980, people were telling me, Ron Paul is the guy that you have to get together with. He needs to understand this. And I have a lot of people who are close to Paul, close to Kucinich, and I mean, I was telling you about Kucinich, I called the Paul campaign. I was actually revising my website to support Paul, and I called the Paul campaign, and the fellow who answered the telephone, I introduced myself, and his first remark back, he interrupts me. Mike Montagne, founder of People for Mathematically Perfected Economy, he interrupts me to notify me that everyone knows there's no such thing as mathematically perfected economy.
Well, if people knew what the fractional reserve system, how it really worked, they'd understand a pyramid scheme. If they were explained on a chalkboard, it's very simple to understand.
Well, you probably haven't seen my YouTube video, which is the only video that explains it, and people will.
I have 2 in the library on our site.
Yeah, well, you need to visit. You need to see all 20, and if you want, I'll be.
We'll mount them.
I'll be glad to send you the full length one, or the 10 different chapters.
Please.
So we'll have to set that up, afterward, because YouTube's a big problem there.
Oh, send it right to us, or however you want to do it.
Well, we better not consume bandwidth while we do that now. But
I thought maybe we would kind of
wind it up
here in the next few minutes.
We haven't got to the solution part here, and that is that
Go ahead.
we need to have some hope. And I'm regularly people. I run into and they have a situation, and they don't respect me because I could resolve their situation, or I could have resolved it before they lost their home. They say they meet me and they say they're glad to have gotten rid of their dead. They're glad to start over again. And I'm thinking, but God, why? You just walk away and give up all that you earned that you should have had, and after I explain these things to people, they say, that I gave them hope, that they thought there was no hope, and once they realize there's a solution. And I mean, I can speak to small or large groups of people, and it's amazing the number of people that plead with me, to run for president. I'm just a regular person,
Treasury Secretary at least.
Well, no, I wouldn't accept the job. Sorry.
But don't you think the Treasury should
I think you'd be good.
One question that I'm dying to ask you.
It doesn't have sufficient power.
But it should. Don't you think that when Andrew Jackson
it shouldn't, because the power should come from the people. What we're forgetting here is that this obfuscation of the currency under the claimed rectitude of privatization actually deprives the private parties who should be issuing the currency from issuing the currency. All we're doing is issuing our own promises to pay. It should be
insane.
one else's right to issue them on our behalf. It's as if there's no contract we could make ever without someone else writing it on their paper and charging as much as the contract is worth, just in principle, and then multiplying that by interest. That's what the central banking system is doing by this obfuscation of the currency. That's why it's terminal. It's not just a Ponzi scheme. I hate that word. That is not even, you can ask anyone on the street, Ponzi scheme. Do you know what it means? They don't even know what it means. They have a loose idea of what it implies, you see. And it amounts to little more than the guy on the top making the most money.
Well, you're paying interest on your initial investors with money from new investors, and it's a circle of continual debt. That the only person that benefits is the loaner.
In a Ponzi scheme, it's not really investment. It's just putting your money in.
Right.
And being in a place in the pyramid where if so many people below you, pay in, you'll receive, if all of them pay in, this is, you got in here, this is where you'll get what you'll get, or if it's allowed to continue expanding, this is what you'll get. But that's not the way the economy works.
Much more complicated.
No, it's actually equally simple, at least. It's a matter
at least fractionally reserved derivative based.
This fractional reserve thing is itself very misunderstood, and I don't mean
derivative base, on the algorithm of 10.
Well, both those things, fractional reserve and derivatives, are a consequence of this obfuscation of the currency.
Exactly.
Yes. So. But people say, no, fractional reserve is wrong. Let's go back to the gold standard. Well, you see, that idea comes from not understanding the problem. You're just outlawing the inevitable consequence. It's like telling Congress, put a ceiling on the federal deficits, on the budget, on the spending. Put a ceiling on it. It's impossible to abide by that because artificial multiplication of artificial indebtedness increases the cost of all things, even to government, thus increasing its costs. And largely, government debt is accumulated not by the same process. It's accumulated by federal overspending. But the federal overspending exists because the cost of government increased at least likewise, even if there isn't any further corruption. And the multiplication of artificial indebtedness on the private sector makes the private sector less capable of paying taxes which rise commensurably to prevent further government overspending. So this is why federal overspending